Hi, welcome to Chamber Chats. I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. We do this on a weekly basis. Normally, I would be in the studios at Czech Television, but with the current situation, we're acting on the safe side, and I'm in my office at the Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to acknowledge that I live and work on the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, in particular the Songhees and the Esquimalt. And this program is made possible by the support of Island Savings, which is a division of First West Credit Union. So if you're having a little lull in conversation with somebody, you're finding you haven't really got anything to talk about, why don't you just say something like, so how about that housing and real estate market? What do you make of that? That'll start the conversation. We're going to talk about that on the program today with a couple of people. Karen Denny-Smythe is the 2022 board chair of the Victoria Real Estate Board and is also a realtor with Remax Camosun. And David Langlois returns to the Chamber Chats. He's the 2021 board chair of the Victoria Real Estate Board, and he's with Madsen Langlois Real Estate. So Karen, when people say to you, what's going on? What's happening? What's the answer to that?
What's going on? We're certainly in a robust housing market right now.
Yeah, the indicators are that this is going to be this way for quite some time. But what in your perspective came together to create this?
Well, the conditions for robust growth in house prices have been in place, obviously, for a while. When we had lower interest rates and, of course, insufficiency of supply relative to demand. And then it appears a pandemic was the catalyst. So people had a shift in preference in geography and housing type. And as the rest of them say, it's history.
Yeah. David, what are you hearing from people on the street or on the phone or by email or wherever?
Yeah, Bruce, it's exactly the same thing as Karen is saying, that we have let's categorize it as an excess amount of demand versus a limited amount of supply. And the result of a demand and supply inequality is going to be price change. And in this case, it's in an upward manner.
Yeah, supply and demand has been the rule of economics for a long time. If there's more people chasing fewer things, the price goes up. And that's exactly what's happened. So I don't know, in the course of this conversation, we'll figure out what next steps might be. So Karen, who are the buyers right now?
Real mixture of demographics, but millennials seem to be making up the largest percentage right now. Families still, and still predominantly local buyers.
Yeah, what are they buying? What are the millennials buying?
Trying to buy into the single families. So a lot of them have been in condos and now they're moving up to the single families.
Yeah, so I mean, when they sell that condo, they're going to move some equity because if they sold even a year ago, they're going to be able to carry some money forward. Is the gap getting greater between condo prices, townhouse prices, and single family houses?
Yes, there is a larger spread than there has been in the past, certainly.
Yeah. David, who are the sellers that you're seeing? Or sorry, the buyers that you're seeing right now?
I'd say they're about the same as Karen was saying, that millennials are certainly making up a large portion, but we're also seeing quite a few people trying to move in market. Most of our, the vast majority of our market is in market already. And then we do have a certain amount of in-migration coming from across the country because, as Karen mentioned, the pandemic being a catalyst to be able to move geographically and still maintain your job wherever it happens to be. So there's been a decoupling of the requirement to be in a certain place to do a certain thing.
Yeah, we at the Chamber hear all the time about the workplace challenges and people trying to source and keep workers. Attracting them from other places is very difficult because not very many places have the cost of living that we do, and that includes the price of housing too. So who are these people that are selling right now, David? Who's selling their place?
It's the thing that's probably driving our market the most is that you've got the sellers who are either putting their rental properties on the market because they think maybe they're getting peak dollar for it. We're getting people who are leaving the marketplace and going somewhere else, somewhere perhaps more affordable. So they're retiring and cashing out. And then we've got the underlying drivers that we always have, which are death, divorce, and transfer.
Yeah, the sellers, Karen, not to be redundant, but I mean, each realtor has a different profile of clients, right, that you deal with. So who are the sellers that you're seeing right now? Both the regular ones and any that are exceptional.
Yeah, none exceptional. Perhaps the only ones we're seeing less of, David sort of touched, I think, on everything I'm seeing as well. The only ones I'd say that we're seeing less of is maybe some of the seniors are a little more reluctant to sell. So they're staying a little more firmly put at the moment.
When we talk about millennials getting into the market, very often conversations I have with chamber members is people are wondering, how can people of that age afford to get into this market? I mean, when some of us got in when we were younger, it was more affordable. It was a challenge at the best of times, but the prices now, like, where are millennials getting the backing to do this? David, talk to me about that.
Well, one thing I'll mention is that when we talk about millennials, people our age tend to have them frozen at 22, whereas millennials now are in their mid to late 30s. That's the front end of the millennial generation. So they're in their 30s. They're in their prime home buying years. The ones that got started early, obviously, they've enjoyed an equity appreciation, so they've got more to work with. And the ones that are coming into the market now, again, they tend to be a little bit on the older side, if you like, of a first-time home buyer. They're well established financially, and they have the wherewithal to get into the market. Now, having said that, if we're not just talking about millennials, but home buyers in general, first-time home buyers, almost across the board, get help from somebody else, either a family member, an inheritance, a gift from the parents, grandparents, something. We're seeing that is emerge as a trend, especially over the last couple of years. I think one of the big credit unions report came out that virtually 100% of first-time home buyers were getting help from somebody else.
You see the same thing, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the good thing about this is go and have a conversation with your favorite realtor and find out how you can have a plan put in place for you to specifically work in this market as well if you're just starting out.
Yeah, so we have an area here that's kind of, some would say geographically diverse, depending on what sort of density you're looking for, or how much rural you want to have, how much urban you want to have. Where in this whole listing spectrum has been the largest jump, the largest increase? David, I'll start with you.
Well, we've seen a lot of new condo inventory come onto the market. We've seen a lot of single family homes in the West Shore come onto the market. So in terms of increasing inventory such that it's all been absorbed, but the increasing inventory, these sales have been coming from primarily those two drivers. If we're looking at where the incremental change is.
Which affects the price across the market too, but geography is a bit of a factor.
Yeah.
Karen, what are you seeing? Where are the areas of greatest activity?
Same thing, single family dwellings has certainly been our jam. I mean, that's where we're getting stuck a bit because, and condos, whereas we lost the market with condos last year, that market has come back by about 16% this year. So it's certainly caught back up again. So we are seeing the jam still in single family dwellings and townhouses. I mean, we have virtually nothing for sale in townhouses. I think right now we've got 49 active listings of townhouses. So that's certainly a shortage. But of course, there's a less percentage of those available at any time.
Yeah. So Karen, was there a factor that we had sort of people talking about a year ago or so when they realized that they would be working from home more and they were looking to make a move into the market? They went to a townhouse instead of a condo because of more square footage and the opportunity to isolate to work. Did you see much of that?
Didn't see too much of going to townhouses because townhouses are such a limited supply. So they were going from condos to single family dwellings. I mean, if you could get into a townhouse, people were, but that's not typically the jump, as I say, purely based on, again, supply issues with townhouses.
Yeah. So we're talking about what's happening here. Next, I want to talk about going back to the good old days, which is last year. Chamber Chats today, we're talking about real estate and housing prices, which during the pandemic have just gone, I was going to say sideways, but they haven't. They've gone up. Karen Denny-Smythe is with us. She is the 2022 board chair of the Victoria Real Estate Board and a realtor at Remax Camosun, rather. And David Langlois is the 2021 board chair for the Victoria Real Estate Board and is a realtor with Madsen Langlois Real Estate. Karen, a year ago, tell me about that.
Well, a year ago, this time of market, our market was incredibly active and we were already well down the road of no inventory. I mean, starting off last year, we started off as the year generally starts. And then, of course, we hit March, and then March, April, May, we just died. And then for no apparent reason, the market just started to go crazy and continued and has continued ever since with what is already well documented in the media.
Yeah. David, what have you seen from last year to now?
Well, obviously, there's been a great big jump in pricing. We're up,
Yeah.
let's say 25 to 30% across the board, across all the asset categories. And we are running about half the level of supply to choose from. So there's no moderation in pricing in our immediate future based, again, back on that supply and demand issue.
So traditionally, real estate listings increase in the spring. That's when people kind of make it through the winter and they think, okay, it's time to make a move and sell and to buy. So let's go back to the magic that was February of 2019, 2 years ago from right now. Karen, what was going on in this market? What was the trending? What did it look like?
Typical trending, although I must say since the last probably 5 or 6 years, we haven't necessarily seen what we've seen over the last sort of, I've been around for 30 years now, we haven't seen what we typically see. So it has been a bit off for a while. Markets haven't, ever since we came out of 2008, 2009, we haven't seen that typical swing in markets. So 2019, we had good inventory, or better inventory. I shouldn't say good. It certainly wasn't where we've been historically, but better inventory. And the market, yes, was doing very well, but much more gently paced.
Yeah. What was day to day like for you 2 years ago, Dave?
We had a much more balanced market 2 years ago. We weren't sitting on, right now we're sitting on a month and a quarter worth of inventory. 2 years ago, when you go back to February, we're probably sitting on 4 months of inventory, still in seller's market territory, but not wildly so. Typically speaking, if we have about 6 months of inventory, then we're in a balanced market. So 4 months worth of inventory, that's where we were floating around for a few months around that time. But in 2016, 2017, 2018, very similar conditions to what we're experiencing now in terms of the amount of inventory relative to the number of buyers that are out there.
So how are we going to increase inventory? Is it as simple as just build more buildings, build more houses, build more units? Is it that simple, David?
Well, yeah, if you have X number of houses, now you have X number plus whatever number you can build houses, you're going to have more inventory. The real issue is that we have excess buyers for that inventory. So whatever inventory we can bring onto the market is likely going to be absorbed. BCREA, our provincial association, is saying, roughly speaking, we have around 6 or 7 buyers for each potential listing floating around. So the accumulated inventory is typically what you see month to month when a market tends to slow down. So you're actually physically adding inventory. We've been outstripping the adding listings to our inventory with sales each month. So our accumulated inventory continues to fall. So there is no accumulated inventory to choose from. So it's an interesting dichotomy, because we're complaining about a lack of inventory and a lack of product to sell, and yet at the same time we've never sold so many properties in a year. So where are we in the sense that we have very, very high absorption rates, and we are selling virtually anything desirable that's listed. So we do have very low inventory, which is driving prices up, but at the same time we are listing and selling record numbers of properties across the board.
Yeah. Karen, what's not selling?
Well, pretty well everything is selling. I mean, there's very little that isn't. Pricing is still important. I mean, people think that pricing isn't important in this type of a market. It is. So if things aren't priced properly, they still don't sell, same as a slow market. But generally speaking, everything that's coming on is selling.
For many years, well, for generations for that matter, people who didn't have the means to buy their own home would rent, and there was inventory for them to rent. That was the solution for that. But the price of rents is going up. The price of housing is going up exponentially, as the word is always used for that. What is the answer for low wage earners? How can they ever possibly imagine to find something in the form of stable housing? David, what do you hear about that kind of stuff?
Well, again, it all relates back to inventory. So if we look at it it's a demographic problem. We have net in-migration coming into British Columbia, and this is a problem province-wide. So I think the net in-migration last year in British Columbia was around 34,000 people. Then we look at household formation, and we look at housing starts. So household formation alone, where people are getting together and they're moving out and they're getting into that home buying or home renting phase of their lives, is outstripping housing starts. So when you have more households being formed than there are homes being built, you inevitably have that kind of pressure. Then you add the in-migration. And the one thing that we haven't seen over the last 2 years is actually immigration, which is about to go up again next year. And this is going to bring, they're talking about 400 or whatever the number, 1,000 of potential immigrants coming into Canada. A certain percentage of that is going to come to British Columbia. And that is going to be an additional wave of potential home buyers on top of our existing problems. So it really becomes a question of our capacity to build homes, to build them quickly, safely, without taking years and years to approve something. And part of the problem lies at the municipal level, where it does take years in certain municipalities to get things built. And then there are other barriers to being built, with like in Victoria, where they have the step code of 5 that they want to impose, which adds tens of thousands of dollars per unit construction costs, which is not going to help the affordability in any way. So there are myriad issues that sort of stand in the way of adding additional supply to getting us to that, to relieve the pressure. But our fundamental problem is that we have a lot of people that want to live here, and we have a lot of people that are forming households that want to stay here. And it's ultimately a demographic problem. And frankly, we should have seen it coming.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about affordable housing. You mentioned immigration, Dave. That is going to come back at some point, and a large number of immigrants arrive here with credentials, and they get pretty good paying jobs. But people who, for example, may come as a refugee are looking for something more on the affordable level. So, Karen, what's the answer, for example, when somebody says, "I don't know if my kids will ever be able to get into the market"? How do you answer them?
Well, again, as David said, I mean, it's such a desirable place to live. It's a small town. We've got small land base and low supply. Right now, we're the lowest builds in the G7. I think Canada's building 420 per thousand people. So we have to do better on that. And when we talk about supply, we're not only talking about market housing, we are talking about rental housing as well. So those housing starts that I just quoted, they're for everything. So we need to do better as a country and as a province.
It's estimated we're 1.4 million in terms of the number of units that we need, and that's a national number. So when you take that number, this has been a structural deficit on the supply side for years and years and years, and the only solution is going to take years and years and years.
So another factor here is going to be interest rates. We're going to talk about that next. We're talking about housing and real estate pricing and things that are going on in this region right now on Chamber Chats. Karen Denny-Smythe is the 2022 board chair of the Victoria Real Estate Board and a realtor with Remax Camosun. David Langlois is the 2021 board chair with the Victoria Real Estate Board, and he's with Madsen Langlois Real Estate. Karen, what's going to happen when interest rates start to go up?
Well, as with any level of uncertainty, whether it's in the housing market or the stock market, we get a blip. But certainly history has shown us that raising interest rates don't stop real estate. So we really, might see, as I say, a slight downturn if it comes up. Remember, everybody's qualifying at 2.25% above posted rate right now anyway. So we might see a tiny blip, but then the market will continue business as usual. And again, back to that supply issue.
Yeah, how's that going to affect larger development projects, David? People are doing huge, they're not paying household mortgage rates, they're paying larger amounts of interest on capital projects.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what effect it has on the development community. Right now, there is if you want to use the term, there's an excess of capital out there chasing development projects anyways. All of the quantitative easing that we've seen over the last 2 years has created a huge pool of capital available for development projects. So we don't anticipate that will have any significant effect. And we also don't anticipate that there will be a significant rise in interest rates in the immediate future. Now, I don't have a crystal ball per se. I'm not an economist, but we do employ economists, and that's what they tell us. That looking to the future, sure, we'll see some moderation in interest rates. It might go up a little bit. But there would have to be some sort of a global event to trigger an interest rate shock, and that would be putting us into a completely different situation.
A lot of people undertook renovations in their homes throughout the pandemic because they were just really sick and tired of looking at the same four walls, and then they had money they weren't spending on travel and other things. So supply chain became a factor. We've seen a switch in that now for new home building and condo construction. The supply chain has been interrupted. The prices went through the roof for lumber, other factors like that. So how much of an impact is that going to have, Karen, going forward with the supply chain until we can get that more stable in creating new housing?
Well, supply chain, obviously, if we've got less inventory again based on supply chain, that will have an effect back to the same reasons that we've been talking about. When it comes to pricing, when people look at housing and when we do market evaluations for housing, we don't just isolate out old homes, new homes. We tend to do it across the board, and buyers, while they may have a slight preference for new, they're not going to pay premium for new. So developers tend to use same comparative market analysis to price their new homes the same way as they do the existing properties.
Yeah, because if the cost goes up to build a new build, then resale goes higher along with it. David, is that right?
Typically, there'll be a relationship between the cost of new builds and the cost of resale houses. They are a little bit different because you pay for a new build. Let's say you buy it today, it doesn't get delivered for 12 months, so you paid in today's dollars for 12 months from now value. So developers and builders will obviously make some calculations in there. They do exist as slightly separate markets, though.
So we've looked back to the good old days of 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. We're looking at what's going on today. Let's jump forward, a little bit of forecasting maybe. Take me 18 months to 2 years down the road, Karen. What are things going to look like?
I suspect your crystal ball's as good as mine, Bruce. Certainly, again, with the lack of inventory, and as we've been talking about, that's not going to catch up quickly. So, in the foreseeable future, I don't see a big change with the way the market's going.
Yeah, David, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I hesitate to project that far out. My crystal ball gets cloudy after about 3 months. But I suspect that the largest sort of risk, if you like, to our existing marketplace is going to be government interference. Governments tend to look at complicated situations and try to bring up simplistic solutions. Markets are very complicated things, and simple solutions don't exist for complicated problems.
Yeah, money has gone out the door at an alarming rate by governments throughout this pandemic. We are hopeful that they don't resort to something like imposing a capital gains tax on the sale of property, which doesn't happen in this country. What impact would that have, David?
It would have a significant impact on inventory levels. I think it would negatively affect, when I say negatively affect prices, I mean negatively affect affordability. It would make things that much more expensive. And for me, the capital gains tax, if that were really something that somebody were thinking about imposing, without bringing along, because it exists in the United States. That's the example everybody uses. Well, the most capitalist country in the world has capital gains. Yes, they do, but you also have a write-off for all of your capital costs, all of your mortgage expenses. It's quite a thing. So you'd have to bring in this brand new, huge bureaucracy to accomplish probably not a whole lot. But for me, it becomes a diversity and equity and inclusion issue, because one of the things that we're very proud of in Canada is our ability to access social mobility. We can move from one place to another because there's access. We're faced with a tax on their primary residence. People would just choose to not move anymore. And you would be locked into the property that, whatever it is that you're in at that time. Let's say you're on the property ladder and you've got to that first rung where you've got a 1-bedroom condo. There's nowhere for you to go now. Because your equity will be eaten up by the government. The person who's going to sell the next thing is not going to want to do that. And there'll be a knock-on effect. So it's rightly regarded as a third rail issue by most of the parties, or at least that's what they say it is. And it should remain as such. Any government that brings in a capital gains tax on a primary resident, and it doesn't matter how incrementally it will be, because that's how they'll do it. They'll start it with, oh, it'll just be these people over here, don't worry about it. 5 years later, it'll be everybody. So ideally, any government that proposes such a thing will be punished accordingly.
Well, we could go on, but we'll have to do that another time. Thank you both for your time today. We very much appreciate it. David Langlois and Karen Denny-Smythe from the Victoria Real Estate Board. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.